Hi everyone, my name is Arielle and welcome back to my channel. If there is anything that I've learned over the last 5 years being in the online space, it's that it's really easy to make assumptions about the people we follow online. I mean, we're given this window into people's life, and I can speak for, myself at least. I share a lot of my life either here on YouTube or on Instagram, but I would say it's basically impossible to share the entirety of who you are, especially in one piece of content, whether that's one video or one, post or something like that. And so that leaves a lot of space to be filled in. And of course, as human beings, we're going to fill in the spaces that we don't know with kind of impressions from our own experience. So instead of, leaving some of these things up for interpretation, I thought it'd be fun this week just to respond to some of your assumptions about me. And I know that, again, even with a video like this, at the end of the day, I can never completely, reveal the entirety of all the things that make me who I am. But hey, maybe at the end of this video, you'll feel like you know me a little bit better. So with that, let's jump in. So I'm not gonna lie, there were a lot of assumptions when I asked in my Instagram stories, so I'm not gonna be able to answer obviously every single one, but there were some themes that came through, so I'll make sure I hit on the heavy questions that got asked multiple times. And I just wanna from the beginning say thank you so much for all the kind messages. I'm not really able to put into words how much it means to me. It's definitely a challenging, time to be in the online space, and I know a lot of people have the opinion of if you're gonna put yourself out there, then you deserve whatever comes your way. But at the end of the day, we're all just human beings and we're all just doing our best. And so literally when I get the chance to read so many kind messages, it does make my day a lot better, especially because some of the assumptions, I tried to put a note that I'm a human, remember how I have feelings, but some of them were, a little harsh. So thank you again for everyone who wrote really kind things. It does mean a lot to me, and I just want you to know that from my bottom of my heart, I am super grateful. Okay, so one of the assumptions that came in a lot was basically that I have unlimited energy and stamina and am always going all the time. And the answer to this would be yes and no. I mean, I definitely am a high energy person and, kind of obnoxiously optimistic, and especially when we're in a challenging situation that would require, keeping a positive spirit. I'm your girl. I can keep a positive spirit and keep the energy going even on low energy if I have to. But I was also diagnosed with 2 different autoimmune conditions and have really had to learn and respect the importance of rest and recovery. So I do like to go. I do like to really put myself out there, but if I don't also take the time to, do self-care, to nourish myself through food, just to slow down and rest and, basically fill my cup up, then I don't have the capacity to go out and do all those things. So part of me being the energetic person that I am comes from taking the time to really get some solid rest. So there were a lot of you that assumed that I don't want to have kids because I live such an adventurous lifestyle, and I just am not in a rush. So my husband and I definitely want to have at least a kid, maybe 2, but we're not in any rush to do it anytime soon. And I know everybody's got a different timeline. I just recently turned 30 and I feel like I still have plenty of time. So for me, there's just some things I want to do first for myself and just getting getting ourselves set up a little bit better. But I think it would be really great to be able to raise a kid and, show them the adventurous outdoor world that I love so much, because I definitely, the older that I get, the more and more I value family and time with family, especially, after losing my dad in my early 20s. And so, yeah, I do want kids, just not anytime soon. So there were a lot of you that assumed that I am a morning person, and you were right. I am totally a morning person. It's when I feel the most creative. It's when I'm the most productive. I'm not a 4 or 5 a.m. morning person, but I am a solid 6 a.m., 6:30 morning person. I've had different morning routines over the years, and I'd say the routine that nourished me the most was the one where I really took a slow start to the day and did a lot of self-care practices. But as far as being practical and maximizing the amount of time I have to do adventures, especially because I do have quite a bit on my plate at this moment. I have been finding that waking up early and spending a couple hours either, reviewing my weekly check-ins for my nutrition clients or doing schoolwork, emails, those things. Even though I wouldn't say that that's like the best way to start your brain, I like to go do those for quite a few hours and then go to yoga or go on a hike. Recently, I've been like so bogged down with work stuff that I only have time for something like yoga and maybe an evening walk with my dog. But if I have a little bit more time in the day, then I would prefer to like put all that away, like close that chapter and head out on an adventure and then come back, in the afternoon and finish up any loose ends that I need to for that work day. But yes, I am totally a morning person. There were quite a few assumptions about like me and work, like that I completely hate the 9-to-5 grind and need to be outside as much as possible, or that I don't work, or that I just have like an insane amount of free time and I just spend, that's how I'm able to spend so much time outside. And I'm not really sure how to answer that because I guess that's a couple different layers, but basically here's me and my work life in a nutshell. For me, it feels like quite a bit on my plate, and I've been actively working to try to cut things back a little bit so I can have a little bit more work-life balance. I'm a Capricorn, and if any of you guys are into astrology, you know that we are obsessed with work and tend to overwork, and I've always been this way. So I tend to collect all these little things and then get really overwhelmed and feel like I'm gonna explode. So right now I have my master's in holistic nutrition that I'm working on. I have a certificate in like nutrition coaching. That's a year-long program that I'm working on. I have my nutrition coaching clients, I have my yoga clients and sometimes studio classes, and I have all my content creation work, and then I'm trying to have a life in there, which is not that easy. I do like having some sense of routine, especially I feel like I can be my most healthy and vibrant self when I have a little bit more of a routine, meaning that like, it's easy for me to plan meals and I can cook them at certain times and like prep them for the day and, can get like yoga in and these sorts of things that really like nourish me and fill me up. But I also do struggle with doing the same thing over and over and over again. So the idea of a 9-to-5 is really challenging, and I have worked them before, but I didn't last very long. Actually, right out of college, I had a traditional 9-to-5 job, and after about 6 months, I actually quit and went back to waiting tables, which I know for a lot of people maybe sounds like a step backwards, but to me it just gave me so much more freedom and flexibility, and I still had some semblance of like balance and schedule, like, through my regular work schedule. But I just, I've really always been of the mindset of getting creative and trying to find ways to maximize your time. So this day and age, I'm really into time blocking so that I can get all the things that I need to get done that day, but also like if possible, get outside, even if it's just for like a 30-minute walk with my dog. Contrary to what it may seem like, I am not on adventures outside every single day. There have been chapters of my life where my workload is less busy and I can get out more often, or sometimes I will do a bunch of my work and schoolwork like ahead of time so that I can have a little more space to, let's say, go on a road trip or something like that. But I definitely have a lot of work on my plate, and I've been finding it recently harder and harder to, balance it all. So I'm really, like I said, just working on creating a little bit more time so I can have that good balance, because yeah, I am happier when I'm outside. I am happier when I'm doing the things that I love. And I think that even though it can be really challenging, it's always worth the effort to try to find balance if and when we can. And balance is a loose term, but try to find time for the things that bring us joy. I think it's essential for our mental health and well-being to prioritize time for the things that bring us joy. So some of you phrase this a lot more nicely than others. But many of you assume that because I live in Aspen, Colorado, that I'm either super rich or that I come from money. And I think it's a fair assumption to make, because it is really expensive to visit Aspen. The restaurants are expensive, the hotels are expensive, getting daily lift passes is expensive. you know, really any mountain town in this day and age comes with that price tag. But just like any other mountain town out there, there are a lot of regular people who live here. Like towns like this wouldn't run and function. We wouldn't be able to like have all of the luxury things for wealthy people without, you know, regular everyday folk. So I'm not exactly quite sure because there's so many layers to this and I don't want to spend like 20 minutes talking about it. But I do think I'll try to give you like the highlights. I don't come from money. My mom was a full-time flight attendant when I was growing up and basically raised me as a single mom until I was in, you know, 7th grade when we moved here to Colorado. So when we were living in LA, which might be answer one of your other assumptions, we did most of our shopping at like the Salvation Army, and even though we like weren't like rich in things, like we didn't own a lot of things, I feel like really rich in experience. Like I got to travel, and you know, I feel like that was just such a huge perk. Like my mom would meet people on her travels and then we go stay with them, and the flight over there was basically free. So that was a really cool experience. And then when we moved to Colorado, I'd say our life got a little bit more comfortable. She married a man who was a carpenter, but basically within a year and a half of us moving here, he passed away, and that put a lot of financial burden back on my mom, which ended up, I've learned like now later, she was so great at being strong. I didn't necessarily know it at the time, but it did end up being like a lot of weight on her shoulders. But luckily my dad was a little bit more in the picture, and I was almost, you know, of an age where I could start working. So I started to, you know, at like 14 or 15, I'd work like 180, maybe not 100, but I'd work like 80-hour weeks, like no joke, in the summertime, and save up as much money as I can so that I could, you know, kind of keep up with my friends, which it felt important to me at the time. Now it's not important to me to try to keep up. I don't have like expensive tastes. I don't care about designer stuff, and if that's you, like no shame, like whatever brings you joy. Like younger Arielle, that definitely was something that was important to me. But I think that one of the ways that I've been able to really make it work as an adult, completely, you know, providing for myself, living in a place that's a little bit more expensive, is having those priorities. So for me, the priority has always been like, you know, at least again, in my adult years since I've been providing for myself, outdoor adventure and the mountains, you know, having access to the mountains. So I've, you know, worked 5 different jobs at once, and then I've gotten a little bit more creative and smarter and like been able to like maximize my time a little bit more. I mean, something that I think doesn't get talked about a ton is that in an area where there's a lot of affluence, there's a lot of money to be made. So if you can get creative and offer a solution or offer something of value, you can charge a little bit more for that. So when I decided I wanted to teach yoga full time, you know, I was able to charge a little bit more for my services for private yoga instruction than I would other places, because people here had money and the rate that they were expecting to pay was higher here than other places. And so I feel like even though I've never been in a situation where I'd have a ton of like excess finances or money, I've always been able to make it work and make time and space for the things that are important to me. And I will say that like I have definitely in the last couple of years started to expand my earning capacity, but you know, one of my goals is to be able to own a home here, and that is one piece of the puzzle where it's hard or almost impossible to cut corners. So basically every extra dollar I make these days gets saved in the hopes that we can have, you know, a home here, because like I said, that's the one place where I can't be like, oh, I'm gonna get creative and do it here, because it just costs what it costs. But one of the best ways that I think to make it work in a small town is to know your priorities and figure out a way to put them first. So like if skiing is your priority, there are a ton of jobs in almost all mountain towns where you can get a free ski pass with your job. So that's what I did for most of the years that I was here, is I'd work like in a snowboard shop part-time because the money wasn't as good, and then work in a restaurant full-time because the money was better. But that way I could have the perk of the ski pass and then still make enough money to support myself. I also think it's really helpful to not like eat out in town or go out, you know, to the bars and stuff like that. I'm not a big partier myself, but that's a really easy way to spend a lot of money really quickly. I'd say like 99% of the meals that I eat, I make at home, and I make from scratch, which makes it so much more affordable. And then most of the activities that I like to do once you have the gear or you have the equipment is free. So again, I feel like this answer may leave you with even more assumptions and questions about me, but I I feel like there's so many layers to it. But just, you know, if your assumption is that I came from money and that I'm super rich, the answer is no. Thought I'd squeeze a couple fun ones in here. There were quite a few of you who assumed that I smoke weed, and weed is legal in Colorado, but I'm not a weed smoker. I don't have any problem with it. I think that it affects everyone kind of differently. Like, I have friends who, when they smoke weed, they get so productive, literally clean their house and become just like this super awesome, productive, happy human. And it feels very much the opposite. Like, I feel like glued to the couch. All I can do is like just eat a bunch of food. And I don't know, I used to smoke weed as a teenager and I loved it, or at least I felt like I loved it. But as an adult, it just really hasn't been something that I have felt like works really well for me. It's not to say that I'm a completely 100% sober human, but I have found that I enjoy going through life more sober, and that's just for me. So I think it's important when, you know, I share anything like that, just to know that, like, just because something's right for me doesn't mean it's right for you, and it's no judgment on you. Like I said, I feel like it affects everybody differently, and just like isn't really my thing. So some of you assume that I was shy as a kid, which I was not shy as a kid. I was an only child. So I was the kid at the party, like it'd be like an adult party and I'd be sitting at the table with all the adults having a full conversation. I vividly remember, I have very few memories from being a young child, but I vividly remember that when I was in ski school as a little kid, I would intentionally fall before the lift line so that I could get on the chair with strangers, because if you were first in the lift line, you got on the chair with the instructor and the rest got on this chair with like people behind it. But that's definitely not the case so much anymore. I definitely found myself more shy as an adult. I think that I have kind of like an outgoing, bubbly personality, but I really struggle with social anxiety and tend to get really overwhelmed in social situations. I do okay if I'm like, I can teach a big yoga class if there's like this intention behind it. I can like stand there in front of people and not be too nervous. But I get really nervous in like small group settings or like small parties and things like that. It just, yeah, I don't know. It's definitely not something that I used to have as a child, but it's something that as an adult I've just become more shy and more reserved and more anxious, even though I appear to have this like outgoing, bubbly, like carefree personality. Gosh, there are so many more, but I feel like this video will be way too long if I answer all of them. So I feel like I'm just going to end this video there with this last assumption. There were a lot of you that assumed that my life is perfect, or that I don't worry about, I don't worry about stress, or I don't have stress because I don't worry about money and all these things. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I think it's important to know that every single person that you follow is a normal human being and has these normal things. And I think that part of being human is that life is perfectly imperfect. I don't know, like I personally, I can't speak for everybody you follow because, again, I don't want to make assumptions. But I personally really struggle with anxiety and stress. And there were quite a few of you who had, said that you think that you assume that I'm too hard on myself, or you assume that I, probably care too much about what other people think of me. And I think that you're probably right. I think at the end of the day, I just, want to be able to share content that makes people feel inspired and to, feel happy and to feel empowered to live lives that bring them joy. But it is hard to find the balance of sharing the reality of, real life along with the excitement and the inspiration and, sharing, like, it's not very interesting to sit there and share a video of me spending 8 hours at a computer. Like, you know, it's just not as fun as sharing like the big, you know, the fun adventure or the beautiful view from the hike. And so I'm still working to find that balance, because I don't want anyone to look at me and look at my life and look at what I share and assume that I have it all figured out, or that my life is perfect, or that I'm, you know, stress free and like everything's, you know, totally smooth sailing, because the reality is life can be really challenging, I think, no matter who you are. And something like a big illusion that I think needs to be shattered when it comes to the people that we follow on social media is that because they've reached some level of, you know, social media acknowledgement, you know, or like, you know, have enough people following them, that all of a sudden their life is perfect or better than ever before. And I would say that most of the people that I know, not everyone, but most of the people who I know who have a large social media following or a large audience actually are maybe more stressed or anxious than they used to be. Again, I can't speak for everyone, but I know that there's this pressure that maybe it's intrinsic, maybe it's extrinsic, but there's this pressure that we all feel to, you know, show up and to be able to like be someone. I don't know. And it's hard to manage sometimes. And I don't want you to sit here and like feel bad for me. I'm not asking for that. But I think that the main thing is just to, you know, acknowledge that everything people share for the most part is, you know, a highlight reel. And even if, you know, someone takes the time to share those other pieces, like I try to take the time to share about my social anxiety and share about the things that are challenging me, it's just never going to be the full story. So yeah, I don't want to end on like a Debbie Downer note, but I think that this was really fun. It was fun to get to, you know, to get to share a little bit more of myself. And I feel like there's so much more that could be said, and there were so many assumptions that I couldn't get to, but like I said, this video would be crazy long. So I hope you liked it. If there's anything else that you want to know, you can write it down in the comments and I'll try to get back to you. And as always, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And got some fun adventures coming up in these next couple of weeks. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next week.